Well, all right, folks. 7:47 p.m. So that means I only got a few minutes left in here. Before I get out of here, I wanted to do this story because it's important to understand what we're up against as working class people here in not just Gary, not just East Chicago, not just Hammond, South Side of Chicago, what we're up against in this world. The rich got a lot richer during this pandemic. They really did. How much? Every 30 hours, the pandemic spawned a new billionaire while pushing 1 million people into poverty. Here's why. According to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index, 131 billionaires more than doubled their net worth during the pandemic. The world's richest person is now Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy CEO Bernard Arnault, who was worth $150 billion on December 27th, 2022. Now he's worth well over $200 billion since then. It was up around $60 billion compared with early 2020. Elon Musk boasted a fortune of $139 billion. It's a little bit lower now because Tesla stock has not been doing well. But his worth was actually less than $50 billion before the pandemic. India's Gautam Adani, who was third on the index, saw his wealth increase more than tenfold during the pandemic, from approximately $10 billion at the start of 2020 to $110 billion at the end of 2022. At the same time, close to 97 million people, more than the population of any European nation, were pushed into extreme poverty just in the year 2020, earning less than $1.90 per day. The global poverty rate is estimated to have gone up from 7.8% to 9.1% by late 2021. Skyrocketing inflation is affecting real wage growth and eating into disposable incomes of people all over the world. To curb rising prices, central banks are reducing the flow of money into the economy by increasing interest rates and withdrawing excess liquidity. But that is again boomeranged on workers, with companies like tech firms like Amazon, Twitter, Meta, to banks like Goldman Sachs announcing layoffs at the end of 2022. When the pandemic began, central banks around the world swung into action to protect financial markets. Notice, not the people, financial markets. That took a severe beating as governments started imposing lockdown restrictions. To save economies from collapsing, central banks slashed interest rates, lowering borrowing costs and increasing the supply of money. They also pumped trillions of dollars into financial markets with the aims of encouraging companies to invest in the markets. In the economy, Major central banks have infused more than $11 trillion into the global economy since 2020. These interventions triggered a boom in the value of stocks, bonds, and other financial instruments. But the rise in asset prices wasn't accompanied by an increase in economic production. A year into the pandemic, capital markets had risen 14 trillion, with 25 companies, mostly in technology, electronic vehicles, and semiconductor segments, accounting for 40% of the total gains, according to an analysis of the stock performance of 5,000 companies by consulting firm McKinsey. Billionaires saw their fortunes increase as much in 24 months as they did in 23 years, according to Oxfam's Profiting from Pain report released in May of this year. Every 30 hours, while COVID-19 and rising food prices are pushing nearly 1 million more people to extreme poverty, the global economy is spawning a new billionaire. Now, To be sure, both income and wealth inequality has been on the rise since the 1980s. That's the rise of Reagan and Margaret Thatcher and these types of people, neoliberal economic policies. This is what I'm always talking about on this show. Austerity, privatization, what we just talked about with Paul Vallis in Chicago and Philadelphia and New Orleans and Haiti. Privatization of the public commons. That is why these people are getting richer and richer and richer. That's why it's important to reject people like Paul Vallis. And I'm glad the people of Chicago did. Because since the 1980s, the governments across the world began deregulating and liberalizing the economy to allow more private sector participation. Income inequality refers to the gulf in the disposable income of the rich and the poor, whereas wealth inequality deals with the distribution of financial and real assets such as stocks or housing between the two groups. Amongst other things, the post-liberalization period also resulted in declining bargaining power of workers. At the same time, companies increasingly started turning to financial markets to borrow money for their investments. So this is what we're dealing with, folks. These are the types of people that we have been dealing with for the last 3 or 4 decades. And that's why it's important that we stand up against these neoliberal, neoconservative types who push the military-industrial complex, who push the war-industrial complex, who push the prison-industrial complex. Don't tell me all the real criminals are here in the city of Gary, on the streets of Chicago or Philadelphia or New Orleans. No, the real crooks are the ones like Paul Vallis and his friends, the people at Goldman Sachs, the banksters, the corporatists, the defense contractors, the people who profit from wars. Those are the real crooks. Those are the people who are responsible for pushing 1 million people into poverty every single day. And until we stand up against these people and fight back, they will keep doing it. In France, just yesterday, a few days ago, BlackRock, which is one of the world's largest investment firms, French protesters commandeered the office of BlackRock. BlackRock and Vanguard are currently in this country buying up all the housing, all the real estate, so that we can't get it and we will never be able to afford a house. I'm a millennial. I will probably never be able to buy a house of my own, thanks to people like BlackRock and Vanguard. The French stood up against BlackRock and raided their offices. And why did they do this? Solely because the French government wanted to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64. That's it. They wanted to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64, but that was so offensive to the French working class people that garbage men stopped collecting garbage. Police officers have stopped policing. People have decided to go on strike. They are currently fighting back in every way possible against these neoliberal economic terrorists who have been declaring war on working class people, not just here in America, not just in France or in first world countries, but around the entire world. And it is important that we all fight back against these people. So the French, I'm taking my hat off to the French. If you can see me on camera, I'm taking my hat off currently. That says Gary, Indiana, because that's where I'm from. But it is time for me to get up on out of here, folks. This 2 hours has just flown by. Always know that you can chop it up with me on Twitter at The Chemist Lives. I'm out of Twitter jail, so please come and see me at The Chemist is spelled with the K, as I am a product of the Gary Community School System. We can talk about politics, music, sports. You can tell me how terrible I am at my job. And you can watch clips from this show, hopefully, on my YouTube page, Scott Cannon WLTH. Hopefully, Reverend Delwyn Campbell will be back next week. Hopefully, he will be free of his pastoral duties. But always remember, you can interact with all of us at WLTH at the website, WLTHradio.com, the Facebook page, WLTH Radio. Tweet at us at WLTH Radio, and even see us on Instagram at, you guessed it, WLTH Radio. And you can listen to me and hopefully Reverend Delwyn Campbell every Friday night right here from 6 to 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, the same bat time and the same bat channel. So for station owner Marion Williams, station manager Natalie Ammons, I am Scott Cannon. This was Issues and Answers Free Speech Friday on WLTH 1370 AM. God bless the working class. God bless organized labor. And as the good Rev says, God bless you. I'm out, humans.